it to our meeting today. Oh, we're being recorded. Got it. It has been a little while since we've had a meeting, and I know that we have some new members. So, Sandy, I wonder if you would take the roll, and maybe as we do take the roll, as you call the name, maybe each person could give a short introduction of themselves and
Sure.
where they're from, so that we can all get to know each other a little better.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with our one new member who is here, who's actually the first time coming to a meeting, would be Valerie Sasaki. So Valerie, you're welcome to introduce yourself. Welcome.
Sure. Well, I'm really excited to be here today. I'm a partner with Samuels Will and Cantor in Portland, and I've been involved with various bar activities, and most recently with the Laws Commission's LLC work group. So, which was an incredibly positive project, and I'm really happy with where we are on it right now. So I look forward to working with you all, and it's great to see you this Monday morning.
By all accounts, Valerie, you've been doing yeoman's work with the LLC group, and we really appreciate it. And I can also see you're a giant book nerd, so you must fit in very well given your surroundings. Welcome.
And then I guess we'll just go the squares in order. So I guess Krista, you'd be next.
Hi, Krista Obold-Eshelman, and I am a juvenile law appellate attorney with Youth Rights and Justice in Portland. Yeah, I've been on the commission for about 5 years now, I think, and I co-chair the Justice and Municipal Courts work group.
Next would be Professor Gary.
Hi, Susan Gary. I am on the faculty at the University of Oregon Law School. I'm the law school's representative to the commission. I teach nonprofits and trusts and estates here, and I was involved in the big probate modernization project, which seems never to end, but it's mostly at this point.
We could always get that one reconvened at some point, Susan. It would never surprise me. Justice Duncan.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm Rebecca Duncan. I'm a justice on the Supreme Court for the state, and I've been on the commission for about 4 years. And with Krista Obold-Eshelman, I'm co-chairing the Justice and Municipal Court Appeals Project.
Thank you. Fred Boss.
I'm Fred Boss. I'm the representative of the Attorney General on the commission. I am a special counsel to the Attorney General. I used to be the Deputy Attorney General for quite a few years.
Thank you. Representative Kropf.
Jason Krupp, state rep from Bend. I'm an attorney. I've been in civil practice, used to be a deputy district attorney here in Bend for 15 or so years. Nice to see everybody.
Great. PK, you want to save you for last? You're next on my list, but you're welcome to introduce.
I'll go in order with everyone else. PK Runkles Pearson. I am the chief legal counsel to the Oregon Secretary of State. I'm here as the governor's appointee, and when I began, I was in private practice. And I am not currently chairing any work groups. I'm chair of the commission, and I have chaired the workplace, whatever we called it, workplace harassment work group in the state capitol a few years ago, which was lots of fun. So welcome, everybody.
It was good work. Dean Galini.
Yeah, good morning, friends. Good to see familiar faces. My name is Brian Galini, and lucky enough to be dean here at the Willamette University College of Law.
Great. John DiLorenzo.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. John DiLorenzo. I've been a member of the commission for, Sandy, you correct me, but I think over 10 years.
Definitely, yeah.
And I've been the Senate President's appointee. An interesting story on how it was that Peter Courtney came to appoint me to this. I'd be happy to share it with you all sometime. I've headed up 3 work groups: the work group on judgments, the work group on adoptions, and most recently the LLC work group.
Also
Thank you,
great
John.
work on that. Thanks, John.
And the other John Perry.
Oh, hi, everybody. I'm sorry to be coming to you without a video. I am on I-5 right now, but I will soon be at my office. So I'm John Perry, Associate Dean of Faculty and Professor at Lewis and Clark, and I'm Lewis and Clark's representative, and I have been ever since Bernie Bales stopped being Lewis and Clark's representative, and it's a great group. I'm really honored to be part of it.
Great. And PK, the only people who are absent is, so we have Senator Przanski, we have Judge Bushong, who I know wasn't able to attend, Judge Lageson, and then we have 2 vacancies now. We did have 1 previous, but just make sure we know. We're still having trouble with that House seat, and I've talked to some folks at the bar, and we're going to try to figure out ideas on that one too. But that's one to keep an eye on, and that's a tricky one because it has to be a member of either the Oregon House of Representatives or a former member of the Oregon House of Representatives who can fill that seat. And then we recently, Keith Benich has left the commission, so we do need a new a fill-in for the Oregon State Bar, and that will go through their appointment process.
Hey, Sandy, I have an idea.
Sure. Well, actually, PK, you'd have to call in, John.
Oh, I'm sorry, PK.
Can I? Oh, that's just making sure.
Can I be recognized for a moment?
Sure. Yes, John.
You know what? I've had some great conversations with Dan Rayfield lately.
Oh.
And he's this new Speaker of the House, and he's a trial lawyer from Corvallis. And I wouldn't be surprised if he might be willing to be on the commission himself.
It sounds like a good idea to me. We're open to suggestions. It's been a hard one to fill. And Representative Kropp, we're really appreciative. It's based off schedules and just the realities of the fact that a lot of you are not full time in that position. It's been hard to get those. But if you think Rep Rayfield, it's really going to be up to the commission. But I'd be happy to do that legwork.
Well, I would defer to Representative Kropp on this, but there's 2 members of the House, right? Who are on the commission?
Correct. Well, there's 2 spots.
2 spots, so Representative Kropp could have one, and it might be fun to have the speaker.
The idea of
I
raising
imagine it's going to be. Oh, sorry. I imagine it's going to be tough with the schedule. The other person that Sandy, I think we talked about, was maybe Mike McLean,
Yeah.
who's back in private practice over here, and I mean that might be a possibility.
He'd be great. He'd be great also.
That's great. Thanks for the suggestions.
And he's former judge also.
He is, yeah, from Deschutes County, right? I believe.
Crook
Or-
Jefferson.
Sorry, Jefferson. Apologize. That region, but yes.
That's great. Good suggestions all. That's a great start to the meeting because I'm going to be soliciting a bunch more suggestions as we go forward. So that's terrific. Welcome everyone, and thank you for making time. I realize this was on short notice, so I want to give a little status report of where we are, and that is really to our agenda item regarding Law Commission staffing in part. So we have struggled. Unfortunately for me, my term as chair has coincided with a time of change here at the commission, which has included our move to the University of Oregon. Thank you, U of O, for having us. And then also the COVID pandemic, which may or may not be over, depending on who you talk to. And then, along with that, a lot of chaos in staffing and other things. So some of the chaos that we have had has had to do with Sandy, which we love Sandy. And when you have good people, a lot of times they have many opportunities. So Sandy has been called upon by the University of Oregon to take on many additional duties in other roles, as well as his role on the Law Commission. And that has meant that during his time for the last couple of years.
2 years, yeah.
Yeah. Sandy has only been working a very small fraction of an FTE as Law Commission director, and has been working the rest of his FTE in other important roles at the university. Fortunately for the Law Commission's budget, paid for by other departments at the university. So we've had some significant savings, but it has also made it somewhat difficult, along with everything else along in the COVID pandemic, to move forward a lot of new pieces of work on the commission. So my understanding is that Sandy has an announcement about his next adventure, and Sandy, I'll turn it over to you for that.
Sure. And I've already started, but thank you for that preview. And first off, it's been an honor to serve on the commission and serve with the commission and helping it to adjust to UO. And I'm really proud of a lot of the work we've done. I recently accepted a new position at the University of Oregon, and I'm serving as the Senate Secretary and Advisor to the President, which is a new role that was created at UO, both to serve as the secretary position is actually modeled after the university secretary position, which was created when the Board of Trustees came aboard, to do a lot of the management work along with the University Senate. At UO, the University Senate is both it's faculty, but it's also represented by staff and students. So it's a full composition of university constituents. And then the president's office stepped up to make it a full-time role and serves as an advisor to the president to do various projects. As you all may have heard or know, we have a new president at the University of Oregon right now, an interim president. So and we'll be doing a search this year. So it's a complex time there as well. So because of that, I will need to be leaving the Law Commission. It's not a position I can do and keep. And when I did the student affairs role for a couple of years, it was always meant to be temporary. That was an interim role. This role is not. So what we're going to do, and PK, we can talk about this plan, is I do want to say a couple of things. One, the University of Oregon is fully committed to the Law Commission. As a part of my discussions in taking that role with the president's office, I worked with the president's office and the law school to make sure that if they wanted to be committed, they understood that it would need a full-time staff member, someone who is able to understand what that is. And I've been given the go-ahead to help lead the search process to replace that. I've agreed to stay on in a smaller role, both to manage the existing projects, especially the one that we're trying to get them through as long as I'm here. And then secondly, to make sure that there is a smooth transition. So right now I'm working on the job description as it goes through, and to make sure, and we have new members here, that it's a unique situation that was created when the Law Commission moved over to UO. UO manages all the administrative pieces for both the finances of the commission itself, and then also the staffing. So the staff member in my position, as well as the administrative position, in my position is a full-time staff member, at least how we're going to post it, as a 1.0 at the University of Oregon. So it gets full University of Oregon benefits. And it's considered an officer of administration position at the university, reporting to the law school. And that's going to continue. There's no question about that. Now it really is just getting the job description approved, forming a search committee, and then working through all of the HR mechanics at UO, which can take some time, but I'm working with the folks, as I see Susan nodding her head. I'm working with the folks at UO to try to make that as quickly as possible, but I am committed, at least in a small FTE, to staying with the Law Commission until we have that person hired and trained. So that's me.
That's great. Well, Sandy, we're so grateful for all that you've done for the commission, and we're looking forward to having you help with our transition. I have told Sandy that I realize that the new director is going to be hired by the University of Oregon. I am hopeful that UO will allow at least a few of us commissioners to be involved in the process and to provide some feedback about potential candidates. And I'm hopeful that that we can find a terrific new candidate, and I'm grateful for Sandy and the university to be willing to assist with that transition. I realize this has been a somewhat unusual time over the last few years. It has been my feeling that out of gratitude for the universities providing us a home and all of the services that they provide us in order to keep the commission going, that it's been important for the commission to have this level of flexibility with Sandy as he's been taking on these different roles. And I'm grateful for the university having that flexibility in turn as Sandy's moving into his new role. One of the things that I'm asking you as commissioners to think about is whether you might be interested in being involved in a recruitment process for a new director. And if you are, please let me know, and I'll try to work as I can with the university to get your input on new candidates as we move forward. Sandy, I'd also, we haven't discussed this with you either, but it would be helpful, and Susan, if this would be amenable to you as well, I'd love to have the opportunity to look at the position description
Yeah.
based on what we've learned over the last couple of years, and see, whether the commissioners believe, or whoever is going to work on this recruitment, might have any input, because this is a good opportunity to review a position description too.
Little background, PK, thank you. I already have that in mind. I have the old position description. I am working on it along with the folks at HR. But yes, I would like folks to give some input. And actually, once it's in a form that makes more logical sense to someone outside the university, right now it's in this very technical form. What I am planning on doing, and I appreciate the reminder, is I'm going to send it out to the commissioners before it's posted for input. There's certain things that, based off the university standards, it has to include. One thing that I did have a discussion with the law school is I had suggested the position be either fully remote or based in Salem or Portland, based off the realities of my position. UO responded they would like it to stay in Eugene. That's their preference. That's the one piece that I don't think is negotiable at this point. Though there is an understanding that there are certainly aspects of the position that will be remote. So I don't think that for the right candidate, there will be an office available in Eugene, but there is some flexibility. But otherwise, I think in terms of the responsibility, the percentages of the roles doing different things, specific tasks to list in the position, especially make it a more attractive position for somebody who has legislative experience, is going to be a must, and something, and try to get someone to understand why they would want to take this role. I do, and I appreciate you saying that, and I'd love the help in building that description. So thank you.
Great. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners about the staffing agenda item? I was on a meeting recently when I was told that I had to wait at least 10 seconds to give people time to think. Okay, well, we'll have other topics that overlap with that as we move forward. So if you have something to raise, please do so. Our next agenda item concerns leadership positions. Again, we are in a time of transition. My appointment is through Governor Brown, who, as you know, is nearing the end of her term. Therefore, I cannot be assured that I will be able to remain on the commission past the end of this calendar year. I intend to remain involved in the commission and as many work groups as you will allow me to be involved with. Again, as I said, on a personal note, I am somewhat disappointed that my time as chair has come in this time of tremendous transition when we've been in a little bit of a holding pattern. But I do intend on being as involved as you will have me moving forward, whether my appointment continues in by some future administration or not. But in the meantime, welcome, John, on the screen. In the meantime, in terms of planning, it's important for me not to assume that I'll be able to continue on past the end of the year. And in terms of the vice chair position, our vice chair was Keith Dubanovich, who has now left the commission. So we have some openings. And I'm not going to ask the commission to take any action on this point. I know I've been in discussions with some of you who are interested in leadership roles. I wanted to make sure that everyone has the full scope of information. You can all consider whether or not you might be interested in the leadership role. I'm happy to discuss any of you what that might include. And I'm going to have us schedule another meeting probably towards the beginning of December to have a vote on those positions. So that anyone is welcome, of course, to put themselves up at time of, but my preference be to come up with a slate so that we avoid anything overly contentious. So if you are comfortable with that notion and you'd like to get in touch with me, I'm sure we can find a way for everyone to be involved in the way that they are most comfortable. The other leadership position that is of the chair and the vice chair, if I remember correctly. But others of the commissioners can be involved in the program committee. That is the group that vets proposals, makes a recommendation to the commission at large about whether or not we're going to take on new proposals. In my ideal world, a program committee, when vetting proposals, would also give some thought to how those proposals might be staffed, so that we're not just bringing random things to the committee and then having the committee wonder whether or not we have people to do them. So that is another way that one could be involved. So if you are interested in any of these roles, please let me know. Does anyone have questions about those at this point?
PK, really quick, just make sure you know you're having some bandwidth issues. I think everyone heard you, but you did freeze for quite a bit of it. But did everyone hear her? I just want to make sure. Okay.
Okay, so sorry about that.
No problem.
I am going to maybe turn off my video. But in the meantime, I'll continue and just introduce our next topic, which is the budget. Sandy, could you give us an update on the budget?
Yeah, and I'm going to share a screen really quick just to show you all where we stand. There's not, the good news is we're doing okay, and we're not in a position, especially because UO has agreed to continue. Excuse me 1 second. That is weird. Hold on. How I would usually share is looking very oh, hold on 1 second. I may not be able to share for some reason. I have a new computer and it's doing it, but I apologize for that. I thought I'd just be able to do, let me try one more way. But the reality is, and I can just say it out loud, is our budget, the way it works is we are given a biannual allotment from the OJD budget, the Oregon Judicial Division. It usually is somewhere in the range of $160-ish thousand a year, and that's to cover all of our expenses. That goes up along with the the general cost of living. That's a formula that's done by the OJD budget. My conversations with OJD is we're going to be in the budget request for the next biennium. We have not issued any proposals to grow at this point. I think due to just my position transitioning and others, I don't think we're in a role right now, and also just uncertainty with the legislative session coming up to request a large influx of money. We've done that in the past and have not been able to get it in the budget. Now, for those of you, John, you may be the only person who's still part of the commission from that point, but when the commission was at Willamette a long, long time ago, at one point, it actually had up to 3 or 4 full-time positions, including a staff attorney. I think a lot of people to make, and if you look at the history of the commission, when it was highest functioning were those times when it had a full-time staff attorney, when it had 1 or 2 administrative people who were working, and it had a lot of students who were working on the projects as well. Due to, as PK said, transition to UO, COVID for a couple of years, which just really put both the legislature and the whole world in many ways in a different position. We haven't been in a position to request that. And we could in the future, and it's something that when the new director is hired, I want to make sure they understand those mechanisms to do that. But where we currently stand is we've been spending very little money. It's basically been a small amount of salary. And then for me, with my small FTE, we have $112,000 that are in our reserves, which is based off salary savings from the last couple of years. So that will be able to continue based off the rules. Of my understanding, I've spoken to the folks at OJD, the way it's managed, that will be able to remain with the commission for future expenses, as well as we hopefully will get an allotment from the OJD budget next time. I haven't heard anything from them otherwise. I keep an eye on that, both when that budget comes out. It's a couple stages. It's first will come in the Chief Justice budget, then throughout the legislative session next year. So myself or hopefully the new director will go and testify at that at the budget hearing and make sure that that's on track with our budget liaisons at OJD. But that's where we currently stand. I don't believe I'm able to share my screen. I apologize for that. But we have $112,705 is our number in salary savings from my position from the last couple of years. And that's addition to our allotment. So we're not in a position where even if we were to get, and none of us can predict the economy at this point, even if we were in a position to get a cut for the future, which we're not anticipating, but if we were, we can withstand it for a couple years. So I think that's a good position for the next biennium to at least be able to support the commission in our current role. If we ever want to grow the commission, there would need to be a policy option package to do that. But at this point, we don't feel that's advisable to request that. So that's where we stand on the budget.
And folks, one of the things that I have talked to Sandy about and will emphasize to a future director as well is that I think we have a good case to make to the legislature that the commission is actually kind of a bargain for them, in that, you know, for the FTE that they're spending, they're getting a great deal of volunteer time, really from all of you, and from all of the folks who work on our work groups. And so one of the things that I'm hoping to do in the future is to ask for some minimal reporting from the folks who work on our work groups and from the commissioners on the time spent. And I'd like to present that to the legislature to demonstrate, you know, for this spend on staff time, you are getting services worth, you know, whatever your billable rates are for those of you in private practice. And you know, that's really a tremendous service to the people of Oregon. And it's something that that I think that because of all of you, they get at relatively low investment. So I may be asking for some of that information from you as we move forward. Any questions from the commissioners about the budget? John?
PK, I have a question. Yeah. Several years ago, when the legislature was struggling over how to handle workplace harassment issues, President Courtney assigned to us the task of trying to develop a model. And right, and you were in charge of that. And I think having the commission was very useful for members to, you know, politically and otherwise. And I think we generated a great product. Was there a special appropriation that came along with that?
Well, there wasn't a special appropriation, but the legislature did provide us with the services of a staff attorney for that project, which was really tremendously helpful. And I don't think we could have done the project in that short period of time without that FTE.
Well, I'm just wondering whether, you know, at some point, someone ought to have a conversation with leadership and talk about that experience and how useful the commission was in you know, filling that that hole, that gap, and suggest that in the future, if there are other opportunities to do that, you know, we should also have, along with the assignment, an appropriation or some way of being able to respond, because we would have never been able to do that with our then staffing levels.
Yes, that's true. And it's something that I have hoped to use to make the case when we come up with a POP in the future. But I think that in order to get to that point, we have to wait for a better budget year, and also, you know, get the commission back, you know, into regular form, I think.
Yeah, well, maybe just a historical overview for whoever the new Senate president is going to be. And for Speaker Rayfield might be useful. Maybe we should wait until the Ways and Means co-chairs are, you know, I mean, we know who they're likely to be, but once they're solidified, maybe it'd be a good idea for some of us who have some of the historic background to just have early in the session, a meeting with leadership and just kind of go over some of these points. So at least they're up to date on what the history has been.
I think that's a great idea, John. You know, the other thing that I'd like to do is to take some more of our money and spend it on fellows at UO. And I know Sandy has made some progress with that. That may be one way that we can get some of this additional staffing in the short term, where we might not have a full-time person.
And I would say we've had some great fellows in the past. Debbie's gotten to work with them who have assisted with several projects and also just doing some prep work on potential projects. And we have actually some of those in the the hopper, potentially some work that they've done. So that's a great idea that would certainly be supported by the law school. And it's also another great opportunity for the next director to get to work with those students. I really enjoyed that. And I think that that's another, if someone wants to get kind of into working with students, it's another nice piece of the role.
Great. Any other thoughts on the budget? I'll just note, since we haven't had this discussion in a while, that one of the things I've hoped to do, again, this requires a little more staffing help, but there's nothing that prevents the commission, I've investigated this, from receiving grants. And I think that there's, a possibility, particularly for special projects that we might be interested in doing and getting some grant funding that might help us with some temporary staffing on that kind of thing. Again, so long as that grant funding is sufficiently nonpartisan, remembering that, that is what our group is all about. Okay, Sandy, have we covered everything that we need to regarding membership? I think.
Yeah, I brought it up during attendance. It was a bit out of order, but we have 2 vacancies. We did just have one, now we have 2 with Keith going off. So I'm working with the folks in the bar on that process to fill. Now they did just fill Valerie's seat, and Keith was reappointed at that point. So they're gonna have to go back through their process to find another candidate and also Krista was reappointed so we need to find a 3rd bar member, but I work pretty directly with Susan Graby over there, and hopefully we'll be able to find someone soon.
Yeah,
and then, and the House seat is the other one.
One person I don't think that we've discussed maybe since our last meeting is that Mark Comstock's term ended, and he was on the commission for quite some time.
That's a great call. His term had ended, and the OSB decided to appoint Valerie to his seat. But yeah, Mark had tremendous service to to the Law Commission, and specifically he stepped in during the pandemic and chaired a group that got our work literally during the pandemic done with our work with remote notarization and remote attestation. So that he was a great member of the commission who we missed.
Yeah, it was tremendous work. And I know that there was a good deal of work with the Secretary of State's Corporation Division on that. The folks over here speak very highly of that work and of Mark's participation. So I'm hopeful that we can pull in Mark on some of our future working groups as well. I mean, there's my vision for the commission is that our work groups are not staffed only by the people in this on this call. Obviously, we need a lot more support from other people who are willing to be on working groups, and that is a great pipeline for the commission, as Valerie is a great example of that. Anything further on the membership?
Again, if we did discuss it a little bit, but if anyone else has any ideas on the House side, I think Representative Croft, I think your idea is a good one, and I have discussed that preliminarily with folks. The speaker is the one who would name the new member. So it's really getting in touch with their staff and having them be able to evaluate any ideas. And I have been in touch with them in the past. They should know that the vacancy exists. I just haven't heard from them recently. So I might tab them again. If anyone's in touch with the speaker's staff frequently, just make sure they're continuing to be aware there is a vacancy. To get in touch with me to make sure that if they would like to appoint someone whenever they wish.
Great. So our next agenda item is project updates. And I know we have 2 active work groups. So are we going to have reports from those?
I think Valerie, yeah, that'd be great. Valerie, do you want to speak about the LLC project?
Sure. Yeah, I think we made good progress over the summer. The draft is done and at Legislative Counsel's office. And I know Sean and Brennan over there is working on it because he sent me an email last week with a question. So that's really good forward progress. And so I think we're still on track. Sandy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're still on track for the 2023 session. And of course, John has been very good at all the legislative aspects of this. So, I think we're going to be needing you a lot more on this side of things when we start having those discussions about when we have an actual bill draft in place, which I think he is predicting that we'll have an actual bill draft late October, early November. So,
And my comment would be, is the meeting we're going to schedule in December. A big piece of that will be to review this bill from the commission and hopefully have the commission approve that bill so it is in a position to go into session. This is one of the larger bills the commission's ever worked on in terms of sheer length, as well as complexity and in many ways impact. I think this is going to have a massive impact on a lot of areas of business in the state. Really, really proud of this work group. Valerie, John has been the chair, and but Valerie's really done a lot of the day-to-day. And I can just tell you from staffing, I maybe 50 meetings at this point. I could look back, but it's been a 3-year effort, and I think we should all be really proud of this bill. Once we get that draft back from LC, you'll get a chance to see it. But I just want to comment, that's been phenomenal work by this work group.
well, and I think that from my perspective, the bill that we have are coming out of really reflects the best aspects of the Oregon Laws Commission process, because we had great input from the state and the Secretary of State's office and revenue, from the private bar. We had some CPAs that were involved in the process. And so it's really been a very positive, enthusiastic process. And I think the work group members are really excited to have been involved as well. So I think that there's a good brand impact there as well.
Yeah, I just also, I'd like to add something too. You know, although I was the chair of this group, hats off to Valerie and Sandy, Valerie especially, for doing all the heavy lifting. You know, we early on decided to share our responsibilities. I was going to be more the tactician, and she was she ended up with the short straw because she was the substantive expert. And I have to tell you, there have been 50 meetings, and I've attended some of them, not all of them. Valerie's handled all of them as a committee of the whole. And I tell you, I am so impressed with the membership. And we have a lot of members. It's not just a few members. And they've all taken up their responsibility, and they all deserve incredible amounts of thanks. I think when we get to our next phase, as soon as the bill draft's ready, it would be a great idea to involve the legislators who are on this commission. Representative Krupp, if you're amenable to having a short meeting with us, because at that point we're going to have to plan how we want to present this so that it has its best chances of passage. But I'm real proud of the product. I think it's fantastic. It's you know, and to have made all those decisions by consensus, to me, is just amazing. So hats off to you guys.
Thank you.
That's the best work that this commission does, I think, is bringing together lots of different people with different views and coming up with consensus just about what works, right? So on the mechanics of it, this is going to be a commission bill, is that right?
Yeah.
You don't need a sponsor?
We do not. This is for the large session. We don't for the odd year sessions. We don't need a sponsor. It can come straight from the commission, and that is how it's being planned.
And I know that this is a bill that includes a lot of details. I mean, it's a big overhaul, but I wonder, you know, one of the things that I always find as a challenge as a commissioner is that, you know, we cover so many different kinds of subjects, and not all of us are subject matter experts on everything. And then all of a sudden, right before something is ready to go, we all have to look at something and either approve or disapprove something of which we may not have a lot of substantive knowledge. So Valerie or John, I wonder, are there any major points that you can give us a preview about that we should be thinking about as we get ready for our next meeting?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
So a couple of things. One, the major focus of this bill is bringing us into conformity with the Model Act to the extent that we can, taking into account decisions that the legislature has made with respect to transparency. and things that are uniquely important to Oregon legislatures. So, I think if there were a tagline on this bill, that's what it would be. I will say that as far as getting this group up to speed, one of the things I'd like to suggest is that one of the members who is on our work group has actually been asked to present at the Oregon State Bar's Business Law Section, CLE, in I think early November. And I was wondering if I could circulate his synopses of the bill to this group. I think that would be useful. As far as distilling down 500, 600 some pages into something that you can actually understand. Here are the big concepts. Because really, when we were looking at this, we were using the example of the carpet layers. Two guys who get together to lay carpet and don't have, don't hire a lawyer, don't have a lot of the formalities, but set up an LLC. What would the logical expectations be for the default rules? And how do we make it as user-friendly as possible? So that's really where we're going as a bar and starting to educate the bar on this. But I know that this CLE is out there, and so I think that might be helpful for developing understanding in this group too.
Yeah, and I think it's also important that we cultivate an endorsement from the relevant bar sections.
That's a great idea.
Plus, there are going to be a lot of CLE opportunities,
right?
Assuming this passes. But what I am advising our group to do tactically is to keep most of our messaging at a 50,000 foot level. Be prepared to address any of the particulars if particular questions come up. But my experience with these big bills is that almost the bigger the bill, the easier it is to pass, because no one on the Judiciary Committee is going to delve into all the granular intricacies. As long as they know that it is a consensus product, that all sides were represented, and that it has an endorsement across the board by everyone. And I'll defer to Representative Krupp on this, but I think that is probably the best way to pass it.
I'll also add that we don't think there's going to be any revenue impact. So we're
Right.
not requiring anything new. So
Right.
And there was a lot of work with Secretary of State's office to ensure that.
Right.
So that was, yes.
yeah, they were great in this process, helping us understand what was possible within the capabilities of the existing systems.
Yeah, our first rule was no fiscal.
And our second one was actually other representatives here. We worked a lot, and we've tried to do everything we can. And Valerie mentioned this briefly, to ensure that we've been in alignment with decisions over the last 5 to 10 years in legislature about transparency. And working specifically with DOJ. I was recently in a conversation, they checked back in on the bill, wanted to know to ensure that we had kept those pieces in mind. And there are notes on probably 12 to 15 sections of the bill where we have explicitly put in language to ensure compliance with a couple bills passed, especially in the 2019 or 2017 session regarding shell corporations and just overall transparency with LLCs.
The other thing we've done is, and again, this is thanks to Valerie, is we have, and Sandy, we have a significant amount of commentary on why decisions were made. And I think what we are thinking of doing is, once we're assured that we know what committees this is assigned to, we want to make sure that commentary is included in the committee records, so there can be a legislative history in case courts later need to interpret what. I mean, I don't think any of our terms are ambiguous, but to the extent that there might be an ambiguity down the line, we'll have all this commentary that a court could potentially rely on too. So we're going to try to weave that into the committee testimony.
And in developing that commentary, one of the things that we kept in mind was the documentation that was produced in Oregon's initial adoption of the LLC Act back in, I think it was the 90s. And, they had actually put together a book that one of our committee members still has because he was practicing at that point, that, is useful exactly for that purpose, John. So I think that's a really great idea and should be very feasible given sort of how we were developing our commentary as we went along.
I think the idea of introducing it into the committee record is very important. I mean, it makes it so much more accessible. I know we've had times in the past when people have had to call Sandy and see if he could find, you know, in the wall of notebooks in the law commission office.
Uh-oh.
PK, we lost you.
Available.
PK, we actually, you cut out there, unfortunately.
Anyway, good idea.
Yeah, and PK, let me just, not to belabor this, but, you know, I'm looking at this from the vantage point of a litigator. If I were a litigator and needed to litigate what a particular provision means, to the extent that there was an ambiguity, I would search the committee records for something that would help me divine the legislative history. One of the problems with a lot of commission bills is that the legislative history, you know, isn't before the committee. It's the history of the drafters, which really isn't legislative history. So to the extent that we can get our commentary adopted by the committees, that then becomes closer to legislative history. And hopefully, you know, a court would pay attention to that. If there were an ambiguity. So, I mean, so much work has gone into the commentary. I'd like it to be available.
So one other point I think is helpful for us to think about. I like your analogy, Valerie, about the carpet layers. And, you know, particularly when we're dealing with something that is supposed to be more accessible to less sophisticated people, right? We want to make, I think there's a real equity implication with that as well. You know, that we're helping people who might not otherwise be able to access the system in the same way, to have a lower cost to entry. And I think that's a great thing about this bill.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Any more questions or comments about the LLC bill? Oh, Valerie, I had an idea. If your member is speaking to the bar, I wonder if they might be willing to make the recording of just that thing available for us as commissioners.
I can talk with bar MCLE. I don't think they'd have a problem with that, but I think that would have to go through the bar.
Yeah,
since they're doing
absolutely.
these joint things now.
If that's possible, that would be, I think, really helpful for us.
Sure. Well, and also if you guys are like me, something will occur to you about 15 minutes after we hang up on the call. So I am more than happy to discuss anything having to do with this bill if something occurs to you.
Wonderful. Lots of kudos for all the good work, folks.
Thanks.
Let's turn to the other ongoing project, Municipal and Justice Court Appeals.
Justice Duncan, you want to start?
Yes. So Krista and I are chairing this group. And for those of you who are new to the commission, what this group is doing is reviewing and revising the statutes that govern appeals from justice and municipal courts to circuit courts, and then from circuit courts to the appellate courts. Those statutes are scattered through multiple chapters across the ORSs, and we are trying to make sure that they're consistent and as simple as possible, because a lot of the folks who are appearing in our justice and municipal courts are unrepresented, and we want to, if they are interested in appealing, make the process as simple for the litigants and for those courts sending, and for the receiving courts, Court of Appeals, circuit courts across the state. So our group has a draft bill. This was prepared by our members, Jim Nass, who is a former appellate commissioner. So he was with the appellate courts and worked on the commission's appeals from criminal cases project a few years ago. And Jessica Menifee with legislative counsel worked with Jim on coming up with our first draft, our working draft right now. And so we have a larger work group, and to go through the draft section by section, we have formed a smaller work group of about 8 folks. And we have been meeting over the course. We've had several meetings since we formed this small group, but we're at about 4 meetings as we're working through the draft bill section by section, with the plan that we will make the draft. I'll try and make the draft an initial proposal, but flag any policy questions that we might identify in the draft, take those to our larger work group, and then eventually to the commission. So those are policy decisions that could implicate what is not so much the process of appeals, which is part of what our bill does, but also what types of issues can be brought from one court to the other. We're really grateful to have a small core group of people doing the very detailed work, reviewing the bill section by section, but we know that we need a larger group to make sure that our bill is fully vetted from all of the constituencies. There are numerous municipal and judicial or justice courts from throughout the state. We're lucky to have a municipal judge on our drafting review group and a justice court judge on our drafting review group, but it's small, and we know we need to expand our reach to more folks from across the state who are in these courts. I know Sandy was reaching out and then working on that, and then with to the transition, we will be working with Sandy to find out what the status of that is and how to kind of continue that recruitment and group development work in the next little while. So if we want, as I know we do want for all of the commission bills, to make sure they're fully vetted and everyone who might show up at the legislature on this issue already knows about this, and we have received all of the feedback we might want that might be out there before we have a bill that we introduce. And so with that in mind, and talking with co-chair Opal Eshelman, I don't think that we are on track for a 2023 introduction for this bill. We're going to keep working on it, but I think if we really want to make sure we have the consensus that we want, it's going to take more time.
Well, that sounds like really important work. Thank you for everything you're doing. And I'm so glad that we have Jim Nass involved too. I haven't seen him in ages. I hope he's well.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's very invested in this as the appellate commissioner. Part of his role was to make sure that the appeals that were coming to primarily initially the Court of Appeals were cases that the court could receive from justice and municipal courts, and then and working with people trying to navigate all of the complicated statutes in that area. So he's very invested in the project, and we're grateful for that.
That's great. And when Jim is invested, he's really invested.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah, he's been really helpful.
Any questions about the Municipal and Justice Court Appeals project? Waiting my 10 seconds. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Looking forward to hearing more from that. And again, I think this work also has an equity angle, right? I think anytime we have something that makes the law more transparent and easily accessible, that has a greater impact on people who are more likely to be disenfranchised. So I'm very happy about that. Sandy, I think we have a few future projects that either have gone through the program committee or need to go through the program committee. Could you address those briefly?
We have one that's currently had gone through the program committee, and we would have liked to get it started sooner, but again, staffing and just the world has made it difficult. And that is I'm trying to remember what the name of it is. And I apologize for that. It's the
Uniform Partition of
Errors. Yes, correct. There's a lot of, I know the acronym in my head, but there are a lot of words in that, but that's Partition of Errors project. That one can get started whenever it's been approved by the commission. We just need to get a chair for one of that group and a critical mass to get that started. The other one, we have one proposal which has been sent to us, and we're holding off. We need to go through the program committee, and that would be the second round of the business projects, and explaining, and Valerie could talk more about this, but the Oregon law, the Oregon Bar's business section is very interested in continuing the work that's been done by the LLC project into other areas of business formation, to ensure that we are further in compliance with most of the rest of the country, and also just better practice moving forward. So we have an official submission from the bar for number 2, but we also want to hold off to make sure we get the first part of that one passed first, before we go headlong into that. We have used a ton of volunteer time from the business law community already for our LLC bill. And but that one is sitting there to go whenever we get the next leadership and membership of the program committee to officially hopefully approve part 2 of business organization.
So on that piece, Valerie and John, I wonder what your thoughts are on whether what that next project might be, and whether the current group seems like they might be interested, or whether we would need to sort of reconstitute a group in order to do that.
Yeah, my view is that success begets success. So I agree wholeheartedly with Sandy. We should get this bill passed first.
Yeah.
Plus, I think the members of the Valerie's work group might enjoy a bit of a reprieve. So because they've been working pretty hard. But my thinking is that the new work group would be built around the old one and just augmented to the extent that we were going to tackle corporate, issues. My recommendation would be that Valerie kind of be the chair for that next group. But really, I think our experience in the legislature coming up will be very useful to determine where the pitfalls are, where they're not, and then once we get that bill passed, move forward. And plus, I think the passage of the LLC bill will enthuse the members of the current work group to keep working.
Yeah, and just to build off of what John's saying, because I think you're absolutely correct. I've had a preliminary discussion with James Hine, who was involved in submitting the proposal. I wasn't involved in developing this particular proposal. But when we were talking about the LLC Act and the Business Law EC Committee, Business Law Executive Committee, we were thinking, well, in terms of frequency of entities formed, of course we have to start with the LLCs, but then really, the next step is going to be looking at corporations. So this is the logical outgrowth of that, and modernizing definitions, making sure that things are consistent as between the entity types. And so I know that there's a lot of support in the business law section and the business bar in general for this work. So I agree with John. I think the members are enthusiastic. Not everybody's schedules will allow them to do the sort of schedule that would be required to keep this moving forward efficiently. So, we may have some turnover, but I do think there's going to be a lot of common membership between the LLC group and the corporate group. But I think it's absolutely a great project, and I look forward to having more discussions about it as we move forward.
Wonderful. Corporate entities are the new probate.
Yeah.
All right. Does anyone else, has anyone else heard of other projects or proposals that might be forthcoming? Representative Kropp.
So there's been a discussion in the juvenile space about modernization of like the juvenile code, particularly the delinquency code, and just there's been some, I don't know, I guess in the last 5 to 10 years, some appellate cases that have created that there is a difference between how cases process in the adult criminal system compared to the juvenile system on the, how does the court process and how do you prove a charge, and an examination of whether those differences make sense or don't make sense. I don't think it's like the biggest project in the world, but it's there's a number of juvenile practitioners talking about this from different angles, and just having one group take a holistic view at it would probably be helpful.
So Representative Kropp, can I ask, so Krista, we had received a potential proposal regarding that topic. I actually had some fellows work on it, but then I knew there were some staffing changes among the folks who presented it. I just want to check back in with you on the status of whether you think that proposal is ready for the program committee, or because it is, I think, on the same topic that Representative Kropp's talking about.
Yeah, and I think, I'm not sure if Lisa K. Williams forwarded that to you, Representative Kropp. We had talked about it. Did she send that to you?
I can double check. I get literally thousands of emails, but yeah, Lisa's part of this sort of work group that we have for the upcoming session. Okay. So I can check in with her.
So I think, I had proposed that along with Nora Van Duzen, who was
Yeah.
working with OPDS at the time, Office of Public Defense Services. And as many of you probably realize, the Office of Public Defense Services has undergone a lot in the last couple of years. And so we had to withdraw that proposal at that point. But with Representative Krupp's work, I think there's sort of a new expansion of interest in addressing some of these issues. And so I think the question would be where to start, but there's certainly a lot of potential issues that could be addressed.
And I do have a copy of that proposal if anybody need to see it moving forward.
So is that proposal ready for the program committee at this point, do we think?
We haven't discussed it with Representative Krupp and all of the people working in that group. So I would say not yet, no.
Okay. Right. I just want to make sure that if we have something in front of us, we're not being a roadblock. So we'll wait to hear more from all the stakeholders before we move forward with that project. Great. Any other projects to discuss, potential projects?
Nothing right now. There was an interesting issue on evidentiary rules that was Keith's passion. That one our fellows did some work on. I worked with Keith. Right now, I think we're going to put a hold on that. We never felt like it was in a position to bring forward where we could get enough consensus on the way to go. So other than that, there are no other projects that I'm aware of, though I have gotten some calls, just to let you know, in my position, once in a while, I'll get a call from somebody who's interested. I'll give them procedure. What my process is, if somebody calls and says they're interested in presenting a proposal to the commission, what I'll do is I'll talk through what that would look like. I'll talk through our process of going through the program committee and otherwise. Then I've often sent some templates of successful proposals. Professor Gary, actually, the ones that you've written are the ones I send to people because they're very well written, very easy to understand. But I haven't heard any follow-up from those recently. So I think people know we're out there, but I haven't gotten any proposals other than the two we just discussed in the last 6 months or so.
One of the things that I would like to discuss with a program committee once we have it reconstituted is, I'd like to think a little more deeply about our criteria for accepting projects. I know that after we took on the harassment group project, that was maybe a little spicier than the typical project we would take on. And I think that perhaps there is among some folks, at least, there's become a feeling that the Law Commission is where you take hot potatoes that you don't want to hold yourself. And I think that there could be something to that, but within limits. So, and I've spoken at some length with Lane about this as well, our former chair, who was the chair since the founding of the commission. And his view and mine is that the purpose of the Law Commission is to address areas of law that aren't working as a practical matter, and then bring together stakeholders from lots of different places and find a way to make the law work. The purpose of the Law Commission is not to take on a particular policy viewpoint and promote that, right? So if someone came to us and said, we want to find a way to, I'm just making this up because of our latest proposal, we want to find a way to reduce sentences for juveniles. Many of us, including myself, might think that that's a lovely idea. But that's not really the purpose of the Law Commission, right? The purpose of the Law Commission is to take these things where there's already been some sort of policy determination by the legislature and then make that work more efficiently and better based on the legal expertise that we have in this group and, being able to get it through and have good connections based on our academic connections, our court connections, our legislative connections. This is a place to have those discussions about how the law works, not a place to have discussions about policy. So I'm sure that there is a much better way to have a criteria that explains that general view. I think that's always been what the commission is about. I think it's what the commission should be about in the future. But I think we should all be sort of keeping this in mind as we're thinking of new projects and as we have things the legislature might want to send our way.
Well, and here's just a general thought that I think would meet the criteria but yet would still be a hot potato, even though it met those criteria. And maybe this is something that Justice Duncan might want to review with the Chief Justice. One of the areas that I think is screaming for restructuring is how we provide defense counsel for criminal defendants who are indigent. And obviously, the current system is pretty darn complicated. And I had a talk with Max Williams about it, who's on the commission, I guess he was reappointed by Justice Walters. And he told me that if we were to start from scratch to design a system for offering services for indigent criminal defense, we would never have come up with the system that we have today that just sort of evolved. One of the advantages, I think, of assigning a hot potato like that to the Law Commission is that we actually have the better opportunity to come up with a consensus product than if the issue is talked about in the political arena first. It's better to talk about it within the Law Commission first. And we've got example after example after example where the political branches could not generate a consensus, but the Law Commission ultimately could. So, maybe that's too big a project for us, too much of a hot potato, but, I think we could do some incredible good if we could find a way to more efficiently generate indigent criminal defense services so that everyone charged can, have a defense and the justice system isn't bogged down, which is where we are right now.
Yeah. And John, speaking from my very limited knowledge of this topic, which is basically reading the paper and talking to a few people involved in the system, I don't have a problem with taking on a project that is controversial. I have a problem with taking on a project which I don't think this one is, that would ask people to come to a policy consensus. I think we already have a policy consensus.
We have a policy.
Yeah.
The Constitution. The Constitution requires a defense.
Correct.
So that's our policy.
Right.
But I can't help but think that we're not being very efficient on how we deliver those services.
Yeah. And that makes sense to me. And it's a similar project to, the harassment project in that, everyone thinks that we ought to have a workplace and a legislature that is free from unlawful harassment. How do we accomplish that? Right. Justice Duncan, I don't know if you had a comment on that or not. You're on mute.
Yeah. I do know that there is a legislative committee working on it, with Senator Przanski's working on it, along with Representative Evans. I believe that they're chairing that. And I don't know what their time frame is. I know a while ago they didn't think they'd have something in for the 2023, but there is that group already trying to take a legislative approach to the public defense situation. I know the Chief Justice is working with them. She's serving on that committee, but this is an incredibly important and pressing issue for the courts, of course, but the people who are coming to the courts. And so I know it's a priority for the Chief Justice, and I can mention to her that the folks that she's speaking with could think about using the Law Commission if there is a way that they think the Law Commission could propose something that would be useful. So I can follow up with her and talk about that. But I know it is something that is very much the focus of the chief and other people who are working in this crisis situation right now.
Absolutely critical. Representative Croft.
No, I was just going to follow up on that. So it's a large work group. I'm part of it as well. It's all three branches. There's people from the governor's office, people from OJD, and multiple legislators on that, along with national experts that attend our meetings regularly from the American Bar Association and current providers within the state, you know, I think there's kind of two parts. There'll be some policy decisions that we'll have to make, and our goal is to have legislation done by 23, but there's also a significant budget conversation to be had in that. And I mean, obviously I'm new to the Law Commission, and so I'm not sure when we're talking about significant budget issues, is that something that usually gets sort of vetted through this commission or not?
Not usually, no. I mean, we don't help people come up with the money.
And you know, I'm not suggesting necessarily that the commission tackle the entire project. There may be circumstances where maybe the current legislative group would like to seek the advice of the commission on a piece of it, or, you know, somehow compartmentalize the discussion and refer compartments A, B, and C to the commission for more consensus building and back. So, I mean, I think the commission might be willing to tackle some pieces of this and have a role to play. My thought is that if we can resolve this question, we will do a great deal of good to, you know, our state as a whole. And that would be, you know, I think that would be a great thing that would motivate people to get involved.
No, I think it's, I mean, we just sort of broke it down to component parts at our last meeting last week, and let me kind of noodle on that, and I can check in with Floyd and Paul about how to sort of utilize this group's expertise on those different parts. Part of it is we are trying to push hard to have something ready in 23, not trying to, we're going to have something ready in 23. So there is sort of a timing issue as well.
Right.
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
probably be something if you're pushing for 23, we would, I mean, it took us 6 months to do the workplace harassment group thing. And that was probably, I think, the fastest we've ever done it. So
Yeah.
that it's possible that might not be the right timing for us, but there may be, you know, additional pieces after you do a preliminary fix or something like that. So I do support the idea of keeping the Law Commission at top of mind for folks in the legislature. Because, you know, we all see how this legislative process goes, right? People come in with a bill and then it's just a whirlwind for a couple of months and then we're done, right? So for these issues that require a lot of additional thought, there's something we can offer. Thank you, Dean Perry. Nice to see you.
And I don't know, Representative Crop, whether if there's draft bills or something that it would be useful to at least share them with the commission, or use the commission as a way to get feedback. That's something to, even if we're not drafting, maybe there's some reviewing that the commission could do. I don't know. That's probably too informal of a project.
I mean, that, oh, sorry.
I beg your pardon. We still have to constitute a work group, which
Yeah.
will take a little time.
No, I could see that. I mean, there are, you know, one of the questions that we're addressing is just the governance of that agency. Now it exists sort of in its own universe, and there's other examples in other parts of the country where it's, you know, decisions made about whether it's in the judicial branch or whether it's in the executive branch, and how do you maintain independence but also maximize administrative efficiency. So things like that could be, and I can imagine different component questions would be interesting to get the Law Commission's eyes on it and you know, evaluation and critique of it.
You know, speaking from my neck of the woods, you know, one other thing that a group like that might consider is referring something for either a real-time audit or an audit after a certain period of time to the audits division of the Secretary of State's office. I know when a lot of people think about audits, they think finance only, but our group of auditors is quite something and does performance audit as well and provides recommendations on how things are working after a certain period of time. That could be the kind of thing that might be useful as you establish something new as well. Anything else on that or any other future projects to consider? Okay, well, hearing none, I know we have come up with a lot of things that we may need feedback from you all on. Sandy and Debbie, I see that you're taking notes. I wonder if it would be possible for you to do two things for us. One, to compile a list of things, questions that we need feedback from on the auditors, or from the commissioners, such as, leadership positions, membership, all that. And then also I'd request, along with Judge Bouchon, that as soon as possible, we put out a poll for a future meeting and set that December meeting as soon as possible, because I know that'll be a busy time for everyone.
Can I suggest something, since we're all here, and maybe we just take like 3 minutes to try and come up with a couple of times in December that'll work. And then Sandy and Deb could maybe circle back with the folks who aren't here now to see if those work. I just know that I kind of live and die by my calendar, and so December is always our busiest month too. So if we have some tentative dates, I can block them out. That would be great.
Sounds good. Let's see, looking at my own calendar here, I'm thinking sometime in the week of December 5th. I think much later than that, we start to get into the full swing of the holidays.
Sure. And this time works great for my schedule.
I will not be available that week, but that doesn't mean it couldn't work for everyone else's.
Anyone else have a big conflict with that week?
The only day I couldn't do would be the 6th.
Great, so Sandy, Debbie, that gives us a few times to start with. Let's think about mornings, about 10 o'clock in the morning on those dates other than the 6th.
So it'd
and
be
that's-
5, 7th, 8th, or 9th of December is what we can send out as a calendar invite, or as a scheduling invite.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Good suggestion. Thank you, Valerie.
Thanks, Valerie.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Anything else for the good of the order? All right, hearing none, we'll give you 10 minutes of your time back. Thank you so much for spending the morning with us. Good to see all of you.
Thanks, everyone.